everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown, and welcome to Hangout with Profiler Pat Brown, number 52. Hey, that's an entire year of Hangouts. How about that? Hello, everyone who is here in the chat room with me. We have Megan is here, Lisa is here, Carolina is here, Anne is here. The other Lisa is here, Lisa S and Lisa M. The other Lisa. That's not nice. Both Lisas are here. I'm going to catch up with whoever else is here in a few minutes. And if you'd like to be in the chat room, please go below and click on Patreon and join Patreon. And you can be in all the live chats for the Hangouts and for the shows on Sunday and for the call-ins that I do as well. And if you just want to help out the channel, do click on the subscribe button, because subscriptions make a difference. Like the video, share with friends, hit the bell for notifications. And you can also, there's always a little $sign. You can just support the channel. We are an educational channel. So, and you can buy one of my books. They're down below too. Okay, that's that. Welcome everybody. And Joe is here from the UK. This is the early show. It's 4 p.m. on the East Coast. It's 9 p.m. in the UK. So I like to do one early hangout and one later hangout so that folks wait a minute, I'm laughing at you, Lisa. You look great, Pat. Your color is healthy looking. What did you do? Well, compared to how horrible I looked last week, I have no skill. I do 5 minutes worth of makeup, maybe actually just 2 minutes worth of makeup. I throw on the lights, and every week I have problems with the lights because there's 3 of them when you do the show. And depending on, you have to change all the lighting colors. And it's really difficult. And so a lot of times it's just a crapshoot, to tell you the truth. And so some days I look better than others. And sometimes I'm like, wow, I looked awful during that show. Or I was like orange, or I was, overly bright pale or whatever. But it is, you saw a boxing movie. Hi, Joe. Love that boxing movie. Which boxing movie was it, Joe? Did we talk? I know we talked about boxing. Joe, which boxing movie did you suggest? Now I'm curious. Give me the boxing name. Joe says yes. The one I did a review for. Yes, it's a good movie. Which one, Joe? I like boxing, so I'd like to know what movie it is. I'd be curious. Hopefully we'll find out. Anyway, until we do, I'm not sure, but I want to find out. Anyway, okay. Today, I want to talk. Oh, here we go. Oh, all right, somebody. Okay, wait a minute. No, this is Joe. Okay, it's called Prize Fighter: The Life of Jem Belcher. I've never heard of that. Very interesting. I'm going to check that out, Joe. I always like a good recommendation. So, all right, now, what are the topics of today? I'm going to be talking about the Moors murders. I'm going to be talking about Fred and Rose West, because there was a lot of comparisons of them to the Karla Homolka situation. And with Karla Homolka, the question was she psychopathic? How responsible was she? Was she did her husband make her do these things? Would she have done these things if he wasn't around? Hold on one second. I am really annoyed by something. What is it? Oh, okay. See, now I'm having some issues here. I'm having a flashing light in my glasses here, and that is being caused by my iPad. And I've got to try to, I think it is. Hold on a second. Yeah, it's the iPad. Oh, it's so annoying. Let me move my iPad to the other side and see if it fixes it. So, see, there's always some technical issue that goes wrong. How's that? Okay. Can you hear me, by the way? I just want to make sure you can also hear me well before I keep going here. So I think I've cured the really bad flashy stuff on my eyeglasses. It's easier to do a show if you don't have eyeglasses, because anybody who doesn't have them, see, I can go like this. And I don't have to deal with all the reflections of any of the stuff. But when I put the glasses on, then I get all this problem. But if I take them off, I can't read anything. So that's life. Oh, Allison is here too. Welcome. Okay, Lisa says you can hear and see me. Okay, fantastic. Okay, so the question was, Karla Homolka, and if you haven't seen my Karla Homolka video, I will link it below. To what was her responsibility? Was she psychopathic? Would she have done criminal things without Paul Bernardo? And the same is true with the two women that we're talking about, with the Moores murders and with the Wests, because you had two guys who were clearly the ones who did the most horrible part of the murders. But then there's these two wives who seem to be very cooperative. And the question is, why are they so cooperative? Why are they helping out in such a way? And which one is worse than the other, and can we say one is worse than the other? And would they have committed crimes in their life if they hadn't hooked up with their husbands? And so I'm going to look at both of those cases today, give you my thoughts on whether I think they're as evil as Karla Homolka or more evil than Karla Homolka. And how these three women, are they very similar or do they have differences? And I'm going to get to that in just a bit, but I want to do some just basic news first. And I thought I'd start out with Salman Rushdie, because somebody did ask about that. Salman Rushdie is an author, a very famous author. This is Salman Rushdie, and his most famous books are these two books. One is Satanic Verses, and the other one is Midnight's Children. I happen to be a big fan of Midnight's Children. I think it's a fabulous book. It's not an easy read, but it's fascinating, and he has a very convoluted, complex mind. And it's about two babies that get switched at midnight, and when India goes independent in 1947, and the partition between Pakistan and India happens, and it's he does a lot of magical stuff in it. So there's like 1,000 babies born exactly at midnight, and they all have these magical abilities. And so, but it's a fascinating book. And so I really recommend everybody read it. But that's not the book that got him in trouble. The book that got him in trouble was a Satanic Verses. So let me tell you just a little bit about that. So Salman Rushdie, let me tell you a little bit more about him. He actually wrote the book 40 years ago. He first wrote Midnight's Children, and then that got a Booker Prize, and was a really good book. And then hold on one second. Let me just go back and that was the wrong site. I just wanted to tell you who basically Salman Rushdie is, in case you've never heard of him, and you're like, who? So let me just give you the Wikipedia version, because that'll give you the quickest one, where he was born. Okay, so he is an Indian-born British-American novelist. His work often combines magical realism with historical fiction, and primarily deals with connections, disruptions, and migrations between Eastern and Western civilizations, typically set on the Indian continent. So his second novel was Midnight's Children, but his fourth novel in 1988, that was the Satanic Verses. That one caused him a whole lot of trouble. And there were huge protests and debates about the freedom of expression and political violence, and death threats were made against him, including a fatwa calling for his assassination issued by the Ayatollah Khomeini, the supreme leader of Iran, in 1989. And then the British government had to put him under police protection. He was forced into hiding. So he did pretty well for like 40 years. I think they stabbed some of his interpreters up. I think they might have killed his interpreter, a couple of his interpreters. But he survived until this week. And this guy came out of the woodwork and stabbed him. He was giving just a normal speaking engagement, and it was in the U.S. Wait a minute. Yeah, I think it was in the U.S. Okay, hold on a second. Let me find it. All right. So he was in New York. He was on the stage, and there's a videotape of it. You can go see it. And he's on stage, and all of a sudden this guy comes on the stage, and people thought he was punching him. And of course he wasn't. He was stabbing him. And the guy's been caught. He's charged with a second-degree attempted murder and second-degree assault, and his name is Hadi Matar. And he is from New Jersey. And he pleaded not guilty, which always amuses me when, people have a videotape of you committing the crime. But I don't know if he's going for insanity on this one. But so he will get probably 25 years in prison if he's convicted. And so He really did some damage to Rushdie. I mean, he suffered 3 stab wounds to the neck, 4 stab wounds to his stomach, puncture wounds to his right eye and chest, and a laceration on his right thigh. And he was in critical condition, was on a ventilator. He is surviving. He's off the ventilator now, I believe. He's even made some jokes. So he's amazing that he survived that. So anyway, they got this guy, and they're like, what? What's this guy's issue? And this is where it always gets really tricky. The fatwa has been around for 40 years, and he has been under a lot of protection and a lot of security. So that's one reason nobody got him until now. But he probably let his guard down a little bit after 40 years, and the security was kind of iffy at this place. But the guy that did the crime, he was actually raised in New Jersey, but he was born in Lebanon. Let me see. Let me find. His mother was Lebanese, and she's born Muslim. And she just said she didn't know if her son even read Rushdie's book, but she said that he was raised in New Jersey and everything was just dandy. But she had separated from her husband. They got divorced, and her husband went back to the Middle East. And so then in 2018, he decided to go visit his dad. Apparently, he went to see his dad, and it didn't go well. But it's not like he came back and said, well, heck with dad. I'll be happy with you, Mom. No. What happened was he came back and hid himself in the basement. It was moody and very introverted and just abnormal behavior. She thought he had become more religious since his trip, adding that he would criticize her for not giving him a strict Muslim upbringing. And she's kind of blown away and didn't expect it. So now the question is, and this is where it always gets really tricky. So let me tell you a little bit more about him. He was born in the U.S., so he's not Lebanese. The guy is an American. Okay, he's an American, and but his parents had emigrated from a place called Irun, which is a stronghold of Hezbollah in Lebanon. Anyway, he grew up, and then he went to school in California, and then his mom divorced the father in 2004. She moved to New Jersey for a fresh start, and then he went to Lebanon to see daddy, and everything went bad. She said, I was expecting him to come back motivated to complete school, to get his degree and a job, but instead he locked himself in a basement, and he didn't say anything to his sisters or his mom for quite a month, and all he'd do was hide in the basement. So now the real question is, what actually motivated him to attack Salman Rushdie? And this is where it gets tricky when you talk about a hate crime or a terrorist crime or a personal crime. And it can get very murky because the guy who commits a crime like this, he himself may not be clear on why he's doing it. I'm going to say before he went to see daddy, he had issues. Maybe mom didn't see them, but I'm going to say he had some issues in his life, whether he thought poorly of himself, whether he had some kind of bad self-esteem, whether he was psychopathic and nobody recognized it, whether, he could have become a mass murderer, kind of the similar kind of thinking. I'm a failure. I'm going to have my moment in the sun. So I'm going to go kill a whole bunch of people and get my moment in the sun. And terrorists too want moments in the sun. They may feel like they don't have a great future. So they become a terrorist, because at least if you're a terrorist, you're somebody, and that's important to people. Maybe he felt like a nobody. Maybe his dad rejected him, and then he thought, I don't fit any place. And while he was over in Lebanon, he just got this, well, this is inspiring, so maybe I can do something to bring back the lack of Muslim childhood I had, whatever's going on in his head. So he decides, for whatever reasons, hey, this guy's, nobody ever got to Salman Rushdie. If I get to Salman Rushdie, I'll be a hero. And he is a hero. It says there's actually been some stuff coming out of Iran that went, yeah, he's a hero. So he does get that moment in the sun, just like a mass murderer. But was his real reason that he killed Salman Rushdie over the book Satanic Verses? Was that his real reason? And we'll never know that. So I always have a problem with labeling certain crimes, because we're guessing. And you could ask him, and he could say, I did it. I did it for because he should. I fulfilled the fatwa because he deserved it. But is that really the reason he did it? Just because he says that doesn't mean it's true. So, and he may decide that's true for himself. He may say, hey, I want to be somebody, so I'm going to do something. And he picks something, and I see that a lot with mass murders. And I get sometimes frustrated when things are called hate crimes and mass murders or terrorism, when they're actually not either of those things. They're just self-fulfillment by some guy with psychiatric problems. So that's my thought on Salman Rushdie. The only reason I know Salman Rushdie is from Seinfeld. I'm not sure about that one. Yeah, I didn't see that show. Really? That book you spoke of, 1,000 Babies of a Certain Type, is reminiscent of the Umbrella Academy on Netflix. Well, they probably stole it from Salman Rushdie. I'm sure they did. Yeah, there was a bounty put on his life. But nobody collected in 40 years, so they didn't do a very good job with the fatwa, in my opinion. It's kind of amazing. I remember Rushdie in hiding for several years. Yes, he did. The Satanic Verses wasn't even published in the UK for a long time. Yeah, it's for whatever reasons, it's still this big, huge issue, which just causes problems. But I just thought that was kind of interesting. We just have to sometimes not be so absolute about what a person is thinking when they commit crimes, because a lot of times it's more in our heads than it is in their heads, or in the media's heads, or in some political thing. They want to give it a label, and the label is to benefit whatever you're trying to benefit. But it may not even be that the killer might go, I really don't know. Well, that wasn't why I did it. So which I think is interesting. So that's Salman Rushdie. And let's see. And speaking of, I want to point out a couple things I got from my recent this one I'm going to do because I was requested to do. Hold on a second. Lisa had asked me to do a show a bit on Matthew Coleman. He killed his young children, and he said he did it because he believed they had lizard DNA, and so he had it in his mind a certain thing that his kids were a danger to the world, and he had fallen into a kind of a way of thinking which was pretty deranged. And the question is, how did he get this way? And is that the real reason he killed the kids? And should he be, what do you charge him with? Is he insane? So it's like Andrea Yates, where does her responsibility lie? And what I find interesting about a lot of these cases is that choice, it's not like it's an overnight thing that happens. There's choices that are all made along the way. And you start here and you keep making these choices, and it pushes you down a road. And when you get far enough down a road, then you may commit a certain crime. But do you ignore the fact that a person had choices all the way down the road till they put themselves in a situation where they couldn't think properly anymore? I don't know. There's that point where that's what I find very fascinating. And I believe people have a responsibility to make choices early on and not blame everything on some instantaneous thing. So now I'm crazy. So, well, but how did you get there? So I got one of the things that was happening was after I did the recent show on Anne Heche and her car crash, I have gotten a barrage of on Twitter. I've gotten a barrage of comments on YouTube, and most of them I just have blocked the people and take their stuff away because they're crazy, because there's so much crazy stuff. But here's an example of one of them that I got. This woman writes me, Hollywood is not what you think. Okay, wait a minute, excuse me. Did you work in Hollywood? No, you didn't. Did I work in Hollywood? Yes, I did. So I actually do know more about Hollywood than you. All right, it's not just for entertainment. It's absolutely for predictive programming. Okay, so basically she's saying all of Hollywood is about programming the brain, and they cooperate with the government to program everybody who watches everything. And I'm going to say most people in Hollywood are just out there for fame, money, that kind of stuff, the whole lifestyle, the culture, just, excitement and all that. And of course, there are agendas in movies, there are agendas in TV shows that can be politically based, or certain groups of people can think this is a great idea. But that now they've taken that idea and they've exploded it into this real huge thing. Okay, she says absolutely believes she was murdered, Anne Heche. And this is the one who smashed her car. Nothing about that accident makes any sense whatsoever. The car looks like it got torched by a directed energy weapon. Oh, really? Okay, a directed energy weapon. Alrighty then. But the house didn't completely burn down, especially since the store owner she visited earlier that day, just hours before, stated she was not high or drunk. The government and media together have the power to make up any story they want to cover up any death. People are so naive as to the level of corruption we are currently at and the spiritual warfare we are eyeballs deep in, playing out in the physical. We are in the highest time of deception and manipulation ever in history. If something doesn't feel right, or if something doesn't pass the smell test, you got to trust that feeling. No, you don't, because sometimes your smell is completely off. That's called intuition. Your intuition is like crackers. Sex trafficking is happening in this country and for a long time. And that is rampant in this country. Okay, so she's gone and down this whole concept of huge groups of people being involved in sex trafficking. Here's another one. There is more truth revealed in movies than in news. It's called predictive programming. That's interesting. That the first person said predictive programming, and this is a guy, so it's a different person. Predictive programming. The foster care system and CPS are the biggest pipeline of child trafficking. Yeah, okay. State Senators Nancy Schaefer, Republican Georgia, and Linda Collins Smith, Republican Arkansas, were murdered because they were exposing this corrupt world of child, quote, protective services. They are martyrs for the children. Okay. So there you go. You got, this is what I've been getting, like hundreds of this thing. You're crazy. You don't understand things. You're part of it. You're part of the whole organization. So the only reason I came out and said this because I'm one of them. So, and this is what's funny about this is when you take a look at something like Jeffrey Epstein, he was involved in bringing girls that were not 18. There's these porn sites that are called barely legal because they have girls over 18, but they look 16. Sometimes I'm wondering if they actually were, but he made sure they weren't barely legal. They were almost legal, but not quite, probably 17, 16. But they took the Jeffrey Epstein thing about him getting, hiring girls into his home that were underage and using them sexually and giving them money, which is called prostitution. And so he was involved in that kind of prostitution. It was proven, but there has never been any proof that he, on his little island, that he is sacrificing little children, sexually assaulting 3-year-olds and burning them up on an altar. So what people do is they take some truth and then they expand it into this really big stuff. And what's interesting, at least Jeffrey Epstein had something going in that direction. Whereas Anne Heche has absolutely nothing to do with anything. She's just an actress, and she's going to be in a movie about sex trafficking, but she's just a mother of a girl who gets kidnapped. She's an actress. She's not involved in anything. So now they say this woman, just because she had a sex trafficking movie coming up, oh my God, they wanted to shut her up. Shut her up? How? The movie's made. It's coming out in September, and she's not even the producer. So how is killing it going to make any difference to the whole sex trafficking world? It's just absolute nonsense. Your show on Anne Heche, hi Gretchen. Anne Heche was really interesting. It's sad people are making a conspiracy theory about her death. The internet seems to suck in people with empty lives and heads. Yeah, and when I talk about the guy and the lizard DNA, I'm going to do a show on that. Should be out today or tomorrow. And I'm going to talk about many, many different versions of this and how I think people get to this point that they believe these things. A directed energy weapon. Sounds like this lady needs to stick her box sets and leave thinking to those capable of doing it. Yeah, you kind of wonder about that, huh? Yes, Annika, how much should they pay me? I'm not disclosing that. It was in cash. A suitcase. $100 bills. Yeah. The lady sounds like she belongs on psychiatrist couch and not just for one visit. Well, this is a mild one. This is mild. You should see what I did that show, and it's been insane ever since then. And as a matter of fact, I don't see all the comments and come in. Sometimes you'll say, "Oh, I wish Pat had commented on my comment." And I try when I first do a show, the earliest commenters, they come in through YouTube and they tell me about them, and I try to respond back. But at a certain point, they're coming in such quantity that they just go up on the site. So a lot of times I don't see them, and that's when I find there's nasty things written about me and then idiotic things. I try to pull them, but if you want to go over there and see what's left, I'm going to say there's probably way more still up there that I just missed. But yeah, so that's what I'm going to talk about with the guy who killed his children, claiming they had lizard DNA. So that's going to be a fun, well, not fun, but an interesting show. Lisa says there's definitely a thread running through the Salman Rushdie, Matthew Coleman, and Anne Heche. I think Salman Rushdie is completely different. I think he's the guy who killed Salman Rushdie is more of a mass murderer. That's all I think he is. But he just picked one, Matthew Coleman, yeah, and Anne Heche. No, there's a difference there. Anne Heche just crashed her vehicle. Matthew Coleman murdered his children. But the difference is, people are thinking strange things about Anne Heche, but Matthew Coleman did think about strange things. And the question is, did he kill his children because he truly believed that, or is this a bunch of bullies making up? So that's always the question. And before I go on, I'm going to maybe I'll go on right now about that. There's one other story about this woman here, and they compared this to Anne Heche. I thought it was kind of an interesting comparison. And I can say yes and no on this. Where'd she go? Okay. So these two, there's Anne Heche on the right, and the woman on the left is Nicole Linton. Okay. Now Nicole Linton, all right, she is a Houston nurse, or she was a Houston nurse. Now she's in jail. All right. She crashed her vehicle. Now what happened was, she has a history of mental illness dating back to 2018, including a number of prior incidents, which appear to be increasing in severity, ranging from the defendant jumping on police cars to jumping out of apartment windows. Court documents said Linton has tried to hurt herself more than once and also has been involuntarily committed several times. She has no criminal history. Now, this is all happening since 2018. So if she's been involuntarily committed a few times, and she has all these bizarre behaviors, you got to wonder, why is our system letting people out so quickly that they're a danger to themselves and to the community? So now what happened? 1:30 on August 4th, she was driving her black Mercedes southbound on La Brea Avenue in Los Angeles County. As she approached the Slauson Avenue intersection, which is a heavily trafficked intersection, she accelerated her car to 90 miles per hour. Westbound traffic on Slauson had been going through a green light for about 9 seconds when Linton ran the red light. Okay, so this wasn't a case where she stepped on it, the light had turned yellow and she stepped on it and just made it through the red. It wasn't even that it turned red just as she got there and she stepped on it. 9 seconds. Her light was red, solidly red, and she stepped on the gas, not slowed down. At an intersection where there was cars clearly going through, she stepped on the gas and went 90 miles an hour into the cars in the intersection. I'm going to say that's murder-suicide. That's my opinion. She didn't kill herself. The woman survived. She did not kill herself. So there were 10 vehicles in the intersection when Linton's car struck two of those cars at about the same time, splitting one of the cars in two and immediately igniting both vehicles on fire. Another vehicle that was hit spun out of control and caused multiple minor crashes. 6 people were killed in the crash. A 23-year-old pregnant woman, her boyfriend, her unborn child, and her 11-month son in one car. And 2 women and the other car were also killed. And there were a whole bunch of other people with a lot of injuries and broken bones. Linton suffered multiple broken bones. So she killed 6 people, including children. All right. There were no signs she was under the influence of drugs or alcohol during the time of the crash. Now, interesting, she had been involved in other crashes. Oh, sorry. And they asked the district attorney's office about the previous crashes. They were told this: due to the fact that the defendant's traffic history involved multiple jurisdictions, we cannot confirm the exact number of crashes. That many crashes. We can only say she's been involved in numerous prior collisions, including one in 2020 that wrecked 2 cars and caused bodily injury. You ask, why is the woman allowed on the street in a vehicle? I mean, apparently it seems here she wasn't like driving without a license. It seemed like she actually had a license. What the heck? She's out there crashing multiple times and hurting people, and she's just out there, and she's got mental issues. So we talk about preventing people from getting weapons who have mental issues. Well, a car is a weapon, folks. A car is a huge weapon. You can kill a lot of people with a car. You know, she could have had a gun, and she had gotten a gun, and they hadn't checked her mental history, and she went and shot 6 people down. They would have said, well, it's a gun control issue. And I'm not getting into politics here, but I just want to point out, they would have said that. But here she is with mental health issues. She's allowed, even after crash after crash after crash, allowed to drive a vehicle when she's suicidal and homicidal, apparently, and she killed 6 people. So I believe this was a murder-suicide, and she just didn't die. I think she will now spend the rest of her life in prison. She's going to get 90 years to life in prison. Well, she deserves that 100%. All right. So again, we're talking about, did she have opportunities not to go down this road? If she tries to go into court and say, oh, I couldn't help myself, I wasn't thinking clearly. The question is, why? And let me put this picture back up. Why, Nicole, if you have mental health issues and you've had car crashes, do you even drive? There's a thing called Uber. You call Uber and you let Uber take you around. But knowing your history, knowing your mental problems and your inability, your dangerousness in a car, you still chose over and over again to get in a car. And look over to Anne Heche, same problem. She's also done the same thing. And she knows she has a problem with substance abuse, yet she still allows herself to drive. And Anne Heche has a crap load of money. She can hire a driver. She can have just a driver of her own, and she can have somebody drive her around. But no, both these women chose with their histories to continue driving. Now, well, it says here, according to documents, she agreed. Get this one. According to the documents, Linton agreed not to practice nursing while the case is pending. You think she should be anywhere near another human being while the case is pending? Would you want a woman who just killed 6 people and probably as attempted murder, attempted suicide? Would you want her near you? I don't think so. Unbelievable. So anyway, okay, she's a sketchy little woman, I tell you. She's very sketchy. Anyway, now here's the thing that people were arguing about. Well, let me find it. Hold on a second. Oh yeah. So then this came out today that the issue here, the way that these women are being treated differently. People are saying, "Oh, we love you, Anne Heche. You're wonderful. We love you. We love you," and they're really nasty about Nicole Linton. So somebody wrote, "She's black and not a celeb." Internet split as Anne Heche is compared to ICU nurse Nicole Linton. Oh God, she was in the ICU too. That's really frightening. All right. So they're saying that Anne Heche and a Texas nurse, Nicole Linton, both found themselves behind the wheels of 2 massive and tragic car accidents in the past week, with the former being pronounced dead following the car crash, but they're not happy with the way these women are being treated. And it says, because Anne will be deeply missed, blah, blah, blah. And then people are saying terrible things about Nicole Linton. All right. Now, and they're saying one of the reasons they're saying this is true is because Anne Heche is a celebrity. And there's truth to that. That part I agree with. Some are saying it's because the reason they're being so nasty about Nicole is because she's black and Anne Heche is white. I don't think it has a thing to do with it. I think if Nicole were a celebrity, she'd get the same treatment. I think the big problem comes down to what happened when they crashed the cars. Anne Heche you can be a little nice about because Oh, she obliterated a woman's house and all her possessions and all her treasures, but that's not bodily harm. So it's not so bad. And then, but this woman killed 6 people, including children. It's hard to be nice about that. Now, interesting enough, in reality, as the speed that Anne Heche was going down that street, she could have easily lost control and run over a bunch of children playing on a front lawn. She could have killed 6 people too. So I kind of feel the same about both women. I do. I feel the same about both of them because they both have mental health issues. They both, I don't know about Nicole over here having any substance abuse issues, but both of them had issues, and neither one of them should ever be in a car. And they chose to do so. And I call both of them irresponsible, and I don't think one is better than the other for what happened, or the outcomes. I just think one was luckier than the other. I think Anne Heche was just luckier for other human beings, not for herself, because she died in the crash. Nicole got lucky because she lived, but she killed 6 other people. So, but responsibility-wise, I think both of them are equally guilty of doing things they shouldn't have been doing and being very selfish in their choices. So that's hi Martin. You're good. Oh, good. I'm glad you're here, Martin, because I'm going to go into the Moores murder and and the West. So I'm glad you're here for that. I was holding off to make sure everybody was here for that. Oh, Bishop is here. She obviously wouldn't be making sound decisions at that point. Well, as you know, that is for sure. Is it a case where she was medicated properly after being committed, and then while she's out, she can't or won't stay on the medication and therefore reverts back to whatever behavior? Well, that is the problem, because a lot of times when people, I don't know what her mental health issues were, this Nicole, but obviously she wasn't being treated. She was either not being treated properly for them, or she wasn't accepting the treatment. One of those two. But the sad part is, no matter what, you can make choices to not put other people in danger. That you can do. This is Andrea Yates. And that's why I believe that Andrea Yates, I believe that was a premeditated homicide. And I do not believe she couldn't control herself, because she was very careful about how and when she committed it. So she had choices. If she was feeling that off, she had somebody to take care of the kids, and she didn't have to be left alone with them. She could have committed herself back to a hospital. She could have had her husband stay. She could have, her mother-in-law supposed to come be with the kids like an hour later. No, she planned that. And that's why I'm the unpopular opinion of she deserves to be in prison and not in a mental institution. She murdered all of her children, and on purpose. And, but this is where the problem comes down to is, does a person have control over certain things? And I think if you start seeing yourself having certain issues, you have a responsibility as an adult to make decisions. Same like if you're getting older and people telling you can't drive for shit, stop driving. I mean, get off the road because you're a danger. There's things you have to make a decisions on and say, well, I have to do that because I'm incapable of handling certain things, and that's life. I mean, we have problems when we're younger, not being able to handle certain things, and maybe at a certain age we shouldn't babysit other children because we're not, not responsible enough yet, and we shouldn't get a driver's license too young because we're not responsible enough yet. There's all kinds of things that we have to do these things in order of how well we can handle things, and how if we can do these things without endangering other human beings, and that's our responsibility. Well, thank you, Lisa. Nice logical analysis of the 2 crashes. Thank you. Does she have a history of erratic driving? I thought you were asking that of Anne Heche, because Anne Heche just showed up, and then the other Anne is here as well, and I'm like, I thought you wrote, does Anne have a history? Yeah, Anne Heche. Yes, I think she had some issues there prior. Bishop says, I'd like to think everyone has that level of self-awareness, but I don't think they do, sadly. It definitely sounds something she's culpable, though. Well, this is the thing. We do have awareness. I think people most of the time do have awareness. They don't like what people are seeing or what they are seeing themselves. They just don't want to admit it because they want to continue doing what they do. And that's when you put the blinders on. That's a selfish desire. And we all have those. I'm not saying that we all don't have them, but how much do we endanger other people? There is the question. Let's see. Martin says, the rule seems to be drive as close as possible to the other car and brake at the last second. Use indicators sparingly. Well, I do know some people who do that. I'm like, so the scary stuff. So anyway, and one more thought since, Joe, you're here, Joe. I hope you're still here, Joe, because somebody said this, and I want to bring this up, and then I'm going to go do the stuff on the ladies of the, Fred. I'm going to do Rose West and what's her name? Myra. Is it Myra? Sorry. My usual problem. I can't. Myra Hindley. Yeah, I'm going to do those two ladies in context of what they're. But I want to bring this up because this is a Jack the Ripper thing. This is for you, Joe. So I would have left this comment up, except for the rudeness. I always point that out. You can always say anything, but just don't be rude and nasty. So anyway, this person saw the Jack the Ripper thing, and the fact that I don't believe that the last murder attributed is. Hold on a second. What's going on here? Okay, all photos. Okay, and I'm trying. Okay, here is it? No, that's not it. Hold on. All right, it is. Oh, here we are. Okay, this is about Jacob Levy and my thinking that Mary Kelly is not. I believe that Mary Kelly was not a copycat, but that somebody killed Mary Kelly and then staged it to look like Jack because they did not want people to think it was him. Now, so this guy wrote, "You're off your head to think some random dude who's jealous of Mary Kelly could possibly do what was done to her in order to stage it. What the hell kind of a profiler do you think you are? Nobody is capable of that kind of savagery unless they're completely and utterly demented to the degree that only Jack the Ripper was at that time." Okay, I would have left that comment up except for the off your head and what kind of profile do you think you are? That's called insult, and so I took it off. But I do want to address it because I think that's a rational thought. Okay, and I think other people have that viewpoint as well. That Mary Kelly, what was done to her, was a culmination of Jack the Ripper killing 4 other women and then finally being indoors and having the time to do it to the max. And they believe that. And I don't think it's wrong to believe that. I don't. The doctor who saw her body, who did not see the others, said that he did not believe the guy had any expertise at all of butchery or of surgery. So he thought it was sloppily done. And the other ones do seem like they knew the guy knew what he was doing. So I don't know. Is there a difference in the way that crime was done as far as knife cutting and all that goes? And I'm not absolutely sure on that. However, the question, can someone who is not, he says, as utterly demented as Jack the Ripper? Now, I do believe he's got a point there that the kind of crimes that Jack the Ripper is doing, that they're not sexual homicides, that they are mostly just butcher stuff, cutting out pieces of women, killing them and cutting pieces of women out. That often comes with some kind of psychosis. In general, he's losing it. And Jacob Levy did have syphilis, and if I believe that he was going downhill, he was wandering the streets at night. So he didn't act like a normal serial killer, like a psychopathic serial killer with a greater plan. He just seemed to jump out and do these just vicious things and butcher the women and be done with it, which is why I don't think he did Mary Kelly. But I see his point that it seems like to him, somebody had to be that demented. So therefore, it's only somebody that was as demented as Jack the Ripper could do Mary Kelly. So I'm like, okay, I totally disagree with that. Why do I disagree with that? Because I know a whole lot of psychopathic murderers who have brutalized the people they have killed. Danny Rowling is one of them. That dude was brutal, cut women's heads off. He did all kinds of things to their bodies. I mean, there are lots of serial killers who rip up bodies, do terrible things to them. and they're not psychotic. They are psychopathic. And so somebody who is angry, and that, whatever reason, jealous kind of stalker guy, he could, it's not beyond belief that he could go in there and kill her and then brutalize her and then say to himself, well, I've already done this, and I don't want them to think it's me, so I'll make it look like Jack, and does more. Not, I think, in the same way that Jack the Ripper did things. I think he did other stuff, which either was Jack the Ripper getting to his final point, or was somebody just making it look as bad as he could. Could somebody do that? Well, if you can go in and kill somebody, if you can brutally kill somebody anyway, I'm going to say you can do a lot of other things. I mean, I can't imagine doing it because can't imagine killing a human being. But there are a lot of people who can butcher people. They can, and they don't have to be psychotic to do it. So I don't agree with his thinking. I can understand that he just thinks it doesn't seem stalkerish to him, or somebody who's obsessed to him. It seems too much for that. So he believes it has to be Jack the Ripper. I don't have a problem with that conclusion. I just want him to know. Of course, he'll never see this because I just blocked him from the channel. And I want everybody to understand that you don't have to be demented in the sense of psychotic to commit a crime that is incredibly brutal and a person has been ripped into smithereens. When you think about it, the fact that you can chop people. Well, let's go back to Karla Homolka and Paul Bernardo. They chopped up a teenage girl into little pieces. That who does that? And Paul Bernardo wasn't psychotic at all. He was, then he got married and they went on a honeymoon. He wasn't psychotic, but he was able to brutally torture this girl, kill her, strangle her, and then chop her all over the place. He chopped her all kinds of pieces and put her in cement. He's not Jack the Ripper. He's just Paul Bernardo. So I just want to point that out because I thought it was interesting. All right. Now we get to I'll just check here before I get to the. Oh, Lisa says, I think Myra and Rose deserve another phone-in. So much to say about them on the theme of culpability. Okay, Lisa, I might make you a deal on that. Okay. All right. So I'll say what I have to say here, and then maybe we'll do a whole phone-in thing on that. Yes. Joe agrees with that. Yeah. And Gretchen says, I'm intrigued by the Moors murders. Myra Hindley died only a few months after I moved to the UK. And Lisa says, that's a great idea. I think we could take really popular cases, choose members who have taken a deep interest in them, and have them on with Pat on a regular basis. Also a good idea. I like it. Because the phone-ins have been very popular. They really have. Us Brits know the Moors murders like North Americans know Karla Homolka or John Benet Ramsey. Horrific, controversial, lots to talk about. We'd love to hear Joe's input. All right. Yeah. Okay. All right. We got to. Oh, beyond belief. All right. Wow. Okay. I might have to do a whole. Yeah. Okay. I think I'll do that. I think I'll have a call in on that. Yeah, why not? I think I will do that. And what I'll do, I'll just do the basics today, and some of what I think here, lead people to the show, and then I'll just set up one, and we'll have a whole thing on what you all think. Because the reason I don't really want to do a whole show on each one of these, and sometimes people say, "Oh, there's so much to talk about." No, these are great shows for the true crime channels to do. Where they're going to explain every single thing that happened in the crime and just tell you the story of the crime. It's not good for me to analyze because there's not a lot for me to actually analyze outside of what I want to talk about with the two ladies. So that therefore, I will do it here. My views on Myra Hindley have changed much since I was young. And Lord Longford was campaigning for her release on religious compassionate grounds. Oh yeah, okay. All right. So yeah, we will do that. All right. So let me see if I can explain this. All right. What are the differences, in my opinion, that I'm seeing with Homolka, Hindley, and why do I always want to forget her name? Sorry, Rose West. What is the difference I see in these women? Because all of them had a man. They did. They had a man. And before they had the man, they didn't do anything particularly criminal. Okay. As far as I know, Karla Homolka, she was just in high school. And until she met Paul and gave her sister to rape and accidentally killed her, she did not have a history of doing too many things. I mean, outside of creepy little things with her friends and just saying things that were like that. Paul, on the other hand, without Karla, was perfectly happy being a rapist. And some people even think, here he was, the Scarborough rapist, and raping, and he would never have killed anybody if it hadn't been for Karla coming along. So some people think she was the one who got him to do that stuff. I don't believe so. I believe he always wanted to have a slave in his basement. He wanted a girl in his dungeon. And because he really didn't have a place to do that prior, he was just raping and leaving the women out there. But once he got the chance to have a girl come to his home and to do what he wanted to with her, first they tried, remember with Karla Homolka, her sister, they drugged her. And the idea was while she was drugged, they would do these terrible things to her, the rapes and all that. And then she would wake up and not know what's happening. And then Karla brought a girl to their home and drugged her, and the same thing happened. So the idea was to do things to her and she wouldn't know it, right? But then you see that wasn't enough for Paul Bernardo. He wanted to have the live creature in front of him who was screaming and crying and calling him a master and stuff, And so now he had to kidnap a girl and keep her alive for days. And at that point, he could not return her. So the murders he did were to keep her from witnessing. So it wasn't a sexual homicide in the point that he specifically wanted to kill them for the thrill of the kill. He wanted to kill them so they wouldn't rat him out. And so it was more a case that he was into the rape and the sadism part than he was into killing them. And so the two of them had to get rid of the girls because they would talk. So for Karla, the thing about Karla is that, yes, she didn't participate in what I would consider crimes prior to Paul Bernardo, but she was a very willing participant after she met him, which is why she gave up her sister. And she was a willing participant during the actual rapes. She was willing to have sex with the women, including her own sister, while they were, originally when they were knocked out and then when they weren't knocked out. And she was didn't seem to have a problem with them being murdered in order to, carry on with their lives. The question would be, so I believe she was a full participant. I believe she was a psychopath. And I believe that she deserved to be in prison the rest of her life, if not the death penalty, which Canada didn't have. But now the question would be, if she hadn't met Paul Bernardo, would she have committed these crimes? And my belief is she would not have. I don't think she was not into raping, and she wasn't necessarily into kidnapping either. I think she would have gone on to, she was into S&M type things. She was definitely into some like perverted kind of things. I believe she would have gone into maybe the world of S&M and BDSM, and who knows what she would have done. She could have gone to parties. She might have been involved in, some kind of odd practices. Maybe she would have gotten into prostitution where she would have been paid for stuff. Maybe, all kinds of stuff she might have gotten into. But I think she did go further because she met Paul Bernardo. So she was still psychopathic, but I think she became a criminal because she met a man who was already a criminal, and the things he wanted to do required breaking the law to do them. So that's where I think she's coming from. Now, when we talk about Myra Findley, what about her? All right, let me just tell you, in case you don't know anything about the Moors murders, I'm going to read you. There's so much information on this, it's going to be hard for me to crush it a little bit, but I have to tell you something if you don't know, if you're not from the UK. All right, the Moors murders were carried out by Ian Brady and Myra Findley between July 1963 and October 1965 in and around Manchester, England. The victims were 5 children. And let me show you a picture of these characters. Okay, this is them. They're a very unattractive pair, if I must say so myself. Something about both of them are, I don't know. very unattractive people. Anyway, and these are the people that they killed. So 5 of them that were killed altogether. And then, so they were Pauline Reed, John Kilbride, Keith Bennett, Leslie Ann Downey, which is the one that most people know him for them killing, and Edward Evans. They were aged between 10 and 17, at least 4 of whom were sexually assaulted. Now, also sexually assaulted, meaning it didn't have to be a girl, because Ian Brady sexually assaulted the boys too. The body of 2 of the victims were discovered in 1965 in graves dug on Saddleworth Moor. A 3rd grave was discovered there in 1987, more than 20 years after their trial. All right, so what they do was basically after they killed people, they went out on the moors and dug, holes and stuffed them in there. And that's a really great idea when you think about it, because, when you have a huge expanse of land, that's a good place to put them, really good place. So anyway, Hindley was considered the most evil woman in Britain. And she made some appeals for her life sentence, claiming she was a reformed woman and no longer a danger to society, but she was never released. All right. She died at age 60 after serving 36 years. Brady was diagnosed as a psychopath. Interesting. Again, we have, in the case of Paul Bernardo and Karla Homolka, we have Paul Bernardo diagnosed as a psychopath, and Karla Homolka is not a psychopath. And I'm telling you, she was one. And here we have Brady diagnosed as a psychopath. And what was really interesting, I think, maybe it's the other guy. Okay, I'll get to him in a minute. He was diagnosed as a psychopath and confined in high security Ashworth Hospital. Oh, yeah. I believe that, let me see if this is true here, because this made me laugh. Hold on a second. I have to go way down here to when he got the trial and the incarceration. Hold on. Okay, the incarceration. Yeah, this I think is just totally amazing to me. Following his conviction, Brady was moved to HM Prison Durham, where he asked to live in solitary confinement. I'm not sure why he asked that. Maybe he's just afraid of the other prisoners. He spent 19 years in mainstream prisons before being diagnosed as a psychopath and sent to the high security Park Lane Hospital, now Ashworth Hospital. Wait a minute. A psychopath cannot be treated. A psychotic person can be treated. A psychopath cannot be treated. The prisons are full of psychopaths because that's what they belong. So he's in prison. They finally figure out he's a psychopath and they move him to a mental institution where that makes 0 sense. So I don't know what was going on in that whole concept. I don't. That blows me away. It just blows me away. So anyway, but I just thought that was kind of interesting. So anyway, let's look at what happened with their as a couple. What made them a couple, and what inspired Myra to go along with what Ian was doing? Because again, Ian was doing the more brutal stuff, including the rapes, and Myra was not. But she did comment. She said, well, I think I deserved a longer sentence than he did because I was more wrong because I brought the children to him. Kind of like Karla Homolka helping abduct girls because she let the girls let their guard down because they saw a woman, and that's how they got the girls. And this is what Myra's saying too. So I'll give her a little credit on that one. So anyway, so Ian Brady, I'm going to skip his whole, well, he had a crappy childhood. And he did definitely some psychopathic stuff when he was young. He threatened people with knives. Somebody said he chopped up some animals. And let's see, what else did he do? He stole stuff. And what else did he do? And he had a short temper. He read books including Teach Yourself German and Mein Kampf, as well as works on Nazi atrocities. So, and I don't think he read Mein Kampf and wanted to know about Nazi atrocities for the historical value, but because he liked the atrocity part of it. All right. So meanwhile, Myra, she, this is a weird statement. They said her father was alcoholic, frequently violent toward his wife and children. The family home was in poor condition. And Hindley, I thought this was a strange comment, forced to sleep in a single bed next to a parent's double bed. Oh, the tragedy. That was up to age 5. My kids slept with me in our bed two children, age 4 and 2, with us. I'm like, the tragedy. And across the world, children sleep with their parents or sleep next to their parents, and a whole family sleeps in the same room. Happens across the whole world, but somehow she had to sleep in a bed in the room with them. The horror. Okay, anyway. A following year, 5-year-old Myra Findley was sent to live with her grandmother nearby. All right. So meanwhile, Daddy taught her to be tough, and so she beat up some boy when he scratched her face or something like that. And it says here that Malcolm McCullough, a professor of forensic psychiatry at Cardiff University, has written that her relationship with her father brutalized her. She was not only used to violence in the home, but rewarded for it outside. When this happens at a young age, it can distort a person's reaction to such situations for life. Well, okay, I will agree with him to some extent on this point. When you're used to, you can become used to stuff when you live in those things, and your bar for things, your level for things can go up or they can go down. So, for example, I grew up in McLean, Virginia, which is quite a fancy little town. My parents there was no violence in the home, no alcohol, no drugs, very proper people. The town was so clean. The streets were clean. I didn't hear about anything bad. I never heard about drugs. I didn't hear. That was like kind of like fairy tale-ish, in that sense. But I remember when I had my daughter. We went out to California, and my husband was going to a training program, and we couldn't afford anything but a really cheap apartment, and it was on Pacific Coast Highway in Long Beach, and it was in a ghetto area, and there were palm trees, so that made it nicer. But almost everybody was on welfare, and after being there for a year, you get used to seeing drunks, you get used to seeing homeless people, you get used to the trash on the sidewalk, you get used to. And Anne Heche will laugh about this because she knows me well, because she makes fun of me all the time about this. Old English 800, it wasn't unusual to see, not me, never me. Okay, sitting near the apartment complex, you sit there with an Old English 800 can and you down it. So, what happens is you start acting as the community acts. You get used to brutality. You can get used to squalor. You can get used to this to the point where it's not that offensive anymore, and your own behaviors can change accordingly to the location that you're in. So that's why a lot of kids who grow up in very violent areas tend to be violent, because it's not a big deal if you steal something. It's not a big deal if you sell drugs on the corner. It's not a big deal if you punch somebody out. Not a big deal. Hey, that dude knifed that person. So you kind of get used to a level of lifestyle. And so that's why it's easier for people to commit crimes in those communities, because people come in and out of jail all the time. It's not that embarrassing to be sitting on a corner with your hands behind your back and being put into a police car, where I can't even imagine it. And to me, it's horrifying, the thought of, oh my God, I could not imagine being arrested. I can't imagine having to go into a jail. I mean, I've worked as a profiler. I've been to a federal penitentiary where I went there to do a television show, and it was creepy as all get out. But it wasn't me who was going behind bars. But there's people that come in and out of prison constantly. It's their lifestyle. They get used to a degraded lifestyle. So I think this is very true. So when you grow up with that, you don't have as high expectations of things, and you're more willing to get involved in things that are scuzzy and scummy and all kinds of crappy stuff, because that's what the world is around you. So I think that's what he's saying there. Anyway, then this is claimed that her friend went swimming and she didn't go with her friend, and the friend drowned, and therefore that had some huge major effect on her, which I think, really? Okay, I don't know that it did. And let's see. So then she became a typist. Then she met Brady and became infatuated with him, despite learning that he had a criminal record. Now, here's the point. She knows he has a criminal record. He's the bad boy. She was attracted by the bad boy. Why was she attracted by a bad boy and not a good boy? Because she's working in an office. She's a young woman. Why wasn't she attracted by those men? Why was she attracted by Brady? Well, Ian Brady was more exciting to her. So she had a choice right there in her own brain, made those choices. All right. So then she starts dating him. And let's see. They used to go to their regular pattern of dating was a trip to the cinema, usually to watch an X-rated film. Okay, this is a great guy you're hooking up with. Your guy takes you to see X-rated films. Okay. And then back to Hindley's house to drink German wine. Brady then gave her reading material, and the pair spent their work lunch breaks reading aloud to one another from accounts of Nazi atrocities. So I have to laugh. It's like, there's a lot of guys you can go out with, but a guy who wants to take you to porn films and read about Nazi atrocities with you is maybe a creepy dude that you shouldn't hang around. But she liked it, you see. So then she began to emulate the ideal of Aryan perfection, bleaching her hair blonde and applying thick crimson lipstick. So kind of like the things that Karla Homolka did to make Paul happy, she's doing to make Ian happy. She expressed concern at some aspects of Brady's character, you think. She wrote in a letter to a childhood friend an incident where she said she'd been drugged by Brady, but also wrote about her obsession with her. So she knew the guy was bad news, but she still wanted to be with him. And you have to ask, was he madly in love with him, or is she in love with what he represented? All right. Because a lot of times we are in love with what people represent, not so much them personally, but we like what they're bringing with them, the lifestyle. So then she started wearing risque clothing and becoming less sociable with the colleagues. And then she started reading Marquis de Sade, Nietzsche, so she was starting to get into a dark side of things. Although she wasn't a qualified driver, she often rented a van in which the couple planned bank robberies. Now, this is important to me. They weren't just about sexual stuff. Paul and Karla were totally 100% into sadism, masochism, S&M, sex. That's what they're about. There were no, Paul did a few other, kind of sideline crimes, selling cigarettes illegally. But other than that, they weren't into Bonnie and Clyde crap. I see Bonnie and Clyde crap here. They're planning bank robberies. They want to do bad, naughty, terrible things. So they went to shooting ranges, and she got a gun. She did get guns, and they planned a robbery. It came to nothing, but they became interested in photography, and they took pictures of Hindley and her dog Puppet. This is weird because you know how Karla Homolka really loved her dog, and Paul put up with it. Well, apparently she had a thing for this dog too, and her dog Puppet. And apparently after they got convicted, they were trying to match the dog's age in the photos of when people were with them to find out, when things happened, and they anesthetized the dog and accidentally killed it. And she was very upset about that. They said that was the only time she showed emotion was when they killed their dog. So she was pretty pissed about that. But anyway, Hindley claimed that Brady began talking about committing the perfect murder in 1963. And they started reading stuff about doing that. They were reading fictional accounts of committing the perfect murder. And this one book on the, 12-year-old boy being murdered, and then so it goes on. And let's see here. So the first victim that they kill was Pauline Reed, attended school with Hindley's younger sister, Maureen, and been in a short relationship with a guy named David Smith, who also had criminal convictions for minor crimes. And she vanished. So they killed her. The next victim was John Kilbride. And let's see, they looked for him, couldn't find him. And then Keith Bennett disappeared. Keith Bennett's father became a suspect, poor father. And then Hindley's sister, Maureen, married this David Smith. This is actually important to how they got caught. Hindley's sister married the David Smiths, whose girlfriend vanished and got killed by them. And she was pregnant, and the parents weren't thrilled about it. But they were, now when you're here, you have Brady and Smith met properly, and Brady was apparently impressed by Smith's demeanor. The two talked about society, the distribution of wealth, and the possibility of robbing a bank. So now you see you've got another guy who's willing to come in on these criminal escapades. And the young Smith was similarly impressed by Brady, who paid for his food and wine. So the two couples drew close. So then let's see, they got let's see, the next one murdered was Leslie Ann Downey. That's the one that was a very, very important one. And she was brought back to the house, and then she was raped and murdered. And Hindley, this is where Hindley makes her claims. She claims she took part in the killings only because Brady had drugged her, was blackmailing her with pornographic pictures he had taken of her, kind of like what Bernardo's taking pictures of, everybody pretty much, and threatened to kill Maureen. I guess that was a sister. That's all. That's probably lies. All right. So anyway, I want to see who did what. Somebody pointed out that what Myra said was she was never in the room when he killed anybody. She was always out of the room, or if they were in a car, she was like, he took the person out of the car. She was over the hill. She was always just somewhere, just away from where the killing was going on. And I don't believe he ever implicated her in actually the killings themselves. And he did rape some of the girls, and rape some of the boys. So he didn't mind raping people, and he didn't mind killing them. And she was willing to cooperate, shall we say. So let me just talk about Pauline Reed. The first one, she claimed to be waiting in a van while he took her onto the moor and raped her and pretty much decapitated her. And she says, okay. So then she came back and helped him, Oh, Brady buried her, but she just hung around. Hindley asked Brady whether he had raped her, and he said, of course I did. Yeah. What's interesting about these women, the same thing with Karla, is that once this happened she had an opportunity to run away, knowing full well it would happen again, but she stayed. Then they did John Kilbride. They picked him up and brought him to the house. And let's see. No. Oh, they used to do this weird thing where she would say she lost a glove on the moors, and so they needed to go look for it. A stupid thing. It's like, really? You're going to take me to look for a glove? And so that's what he claimed. And so they went back on the moor to look for a glove. And then Brady sexually assaulted Kilbride and tried to slit his throat with a 6-inch serrated knife before strangling him. And that was a boy, 12-year-old boy. And then we have Keith Bennett. And Keith Bennett, let's see, what did they do with him? They went to the moors again looking for another glove. This stupid thing worked. And then he, let's see, and again, supposedly Brady went off with the boy, and she stayed in the car, and then he came back, strangled him, and sexually assaulted him. So that's 2 boys in a row. Then they brought Leslie Ann Downing back to the house. She was undressed, gagged, and forcibly posed for photographs before being raped and killed. Hindley maintained she went to fill a bath for Downey and found her dead when she returned. Again, supposedly not there doing it. Edward Evans is the next one. Are we looking for I'm trying to see if we're looking for. Oh, they went to the home there too. And then, this is the Smith one. This is how the guy Smith and her sister get involved in this whole thing. So David Smith, apparently thought they were pretty cool, but I don't know that he knew they were going to kill. And so they brought this guy over to their house, Edward Evans. He's 17 years old, and he came over and he picked him up for a sexual encounter. They drove to Brady and Hindley's home, where they relaxed over a bottle of wine. At some point, he sent Hindley to fetch Smith. Okay, why did he do that? So Hindley returns with Smith, and she told him to wait outside. And then they finally brought him in. Outside, he's hearing a scream, and he's like, what the heck's going on in there? And then Myra comes and says, help him out. So anyway, he comes in, and Ian's standing there with a hatchet and whacks the guy in the head with a hatchet and kills the kid. And then Smith says here, Smith then watched Brady throttle Evans with a length of electrical cord. And then he asked Smith to help him carry him to the car. Well, he did that. And then he was allowed to go home. And then he got home and he threw up and he told his wife about it and he called police. So, and eventually he made a lot of money off of, I guess, tabloid payments of knowing stuff, which is kind of amazing. But all right, so that's how they got caught. So the question was, what was her involvement? What was Myra Hindley's involvement in this? It doesn't appear to me, at least from what I'm reading, that she is like Karla Homolka in participating in the actual act of rape or sexual assault, videotaping him doing it, watching the murders. Karla Karla was really into the participation aspect because she even had sex with her own sister. So she was really into doing that stuff. I don't see here that Myra Hindley did those things. What I think was she facilitated those things. She let her husband do those things, getting some kind of sick thrill out of being involved in a criminal enterprise, a horrific criminal enterprise. Did he bring her into that? To some extent, yes, because I don't know that she would have had this idea of Nazi atrocities and this kind of stuff without him. Originally, it was robbing a bank. I think she was willing to do that. So she was wanting to be with a bad boy and was okay with bad behavior and doing illegal things. But if she had hooked up with somebody else, maybe a drug dealer, I think she would have gone that way. I think she would have been influenced to go whatever way the guy was going. But that's her choice. Again, I don't think it takes away her responsibility. I think that if she had met him, I think she might have been involved in low-level crime herself. I wouldn't be surprised, but I think she would have found somebody to partner up with. I think she was like that kind that liked a bad boy, and she partnered. And she didn't, obviously psychopathic, because she didn't have a problem with people getting killed, really. She did say later, oh yeah, I guess I was more at fault than he was because I lured the girls. But you didn't stop him from killing the girls. You kept luring the girls. You didn't call the police. You did nothing to save them any more than Karla Homolka did. So what were you about? She was about herself. She was about what she was getting out of this sick relationship. So yeah, I think she got what she deserved, but I would put her in the category of, is she worse than Karla Homolka? I'd say she was a little bit not as bad as far as she didn't actually offer her own sister, and she didn't participate in the actual, that I can see, the actual crime itself. Could be wrong. I may be lying. And you may, when we have a discussion on the phone, and you may say, that's just not right. Because I'm doing a very simple thing here. But I do see her as having responsibility for picking him out, choosing to be with him, getting the signs that he was dangerous, criminal, and sick. And she still preferred to be with him and continued on with him till it got worse and worse and worse. And she ended up in prison. So too darn bad, too darn bad. But I don't think she would have been a serial killer had she not hooked up with him. I think she might have been she might have gotten into drugs. She might have become a thief. She might have, I don't know, fraud. She might have gotten into all kinds of stuff. So before I go on to the one I think is really, really, really bad, the person I think is way worse than this woman, and that's our Rose West. And I think she takes the cake. I think she blows it out of the park. So I'll explain that in a minute. Let's see. Let me go up here and just check some of your comments. Okay. Let me go up here. Okay, let's see. Okay, now I'm finding where you are. All right. Let's see. Hold on a second. All right. Here's this is a good comment. Joe says, I thoroughly recommend Beyond Belief by Emmeline Williams as a fine book on the Moors murders. All right. And Lisa says it's a new one to her. Yeah. Lisa says, my views on Myra Hindley have changed so much since I was young. And, that we mentioned that long lot. Wanted her to release her on religious and compassionate grounds. He thought she was rehabilitated. She's not rehabilitated. She's just unable to do bad things. And I don't understand how if you facilitated the brutal murders of children, I'm sorry. I don't know what compassion I need to give you. Yes, let's see. Langford is a good movie on how Hindley conned him and it ruined his spirit. Ooh, I'd like to know that one. I believe she could definitely be a con artist in many ways. I just don't know whether she's conning about what her exact participation in the murders was. That'll be interesting. Let's see. Longford was a naive Christian man who was fundamentally decent, but ideal fodder for a psychopath to manipulate. Oh yeah, and is he he's the one in prison, right? Okay, wait a minute. Where was it? Okay. When women get in prison, we see this all the time. We see it with Darlie. We see it with Karla. They'll play on the sympathies of people who want to believe they're not as bad as all that. That especially with women. With men, it does work with men, but women got it made as far as this goes. And they often turn Christian. while they're in prison, because that's more sympathetic, you see. And so it's like, yeah, I know I did bad things, but I don't. My head was in a weird place back then. But I have found Christ, and I've been working with the Bible group, and I just want to help the other ladies in prison, and I want to help other people who are suffering. And then people go, oh, see, she's very, very nice. and then, yeah, I don't blame anybody for why I'm here, but I do hope that one day I'll be able to go on the outside and help people. And I've been through rehabilitation, and I've worked, blah 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 blah. And they're good at that. I mean, they can play you really easily. So I believe she would do that for sure, for sure. I'm gonna have to watch the movie. Okay, Longford. Oh, I have to really watch that movie. That's gonna be interesting. Brady's nickname for Myra was Hesse, after Rudolph Hess. Oh my God. Very into Nazism was Ian. And and what I'm going to point out there is that I also have read Mein Kampf. My son has read Mein Kampf. Why is that? To understand the history of the world, and to understand how things play out, that Adolf Hitler had some good ideas. He did. And he came at a time when Germany was very needy to try to get back on their feet. And he some of his stuff wasn't bad. Unfortunately, the rest of the stuff was. So, but if you're trying to understand history and how people get into power and how they be able to manipulate once they get into power, you read these kind of things, you can understand, in a sense, understanding the enemy, but also understanding how people are pulled into things, how these people can succeed at certain times. So it's reading people of many different situations and characters. There's lots of fascinating people in the world who, let's say, for example, why am I? Shaka Zulu, for example. Shaka Zulu, there's a book called Washing of the Spears, and it's about how the great king Shaka Zulu became this huge, he became super powerful in South Africa at the time, and he became he was a military genius, and he caused a thing called the Mefakani, I don't know how you pronounce it, and like a million people died due to him. Genghis Khan, brilliant to list, fascinating history of Genghis Khan, and then how many millions did he knock off? And then after he knocked everybody off and got control, he did some really good stuff with governmental methodology of how to run cities and stuff like that, have good systems. So, so just because somebody reads something that you think, oh, wow, that automatically makes him a creepy dude. Not necessarily. But in this case, he was interested in the Nazi atrocities. He was interested in a sick sense of power and of doing horrifically bad things. That was his interest. So his interest wasn't history. His interest is in making some history in a very terrible, terrible way. Lisa says, I had a friend who said, that's my auntie. Oh my God, when Myra's photo appeared on TV, she had been approached by Myra, but ran off to tell her mother that her auntie was here instead of going with her. Oh, how lovely. Ugh, she lucked out on that one. Let's see. Okay. Lisa says, part of me thinks these women couldn't have done such things. Then I remember other cases where women got away with crimes based on such thinking. Oh, yeah, they can do these things. Women are just as culpable as men, absolutely, in committing, being complicit, and accessory, etc. No way they should be let off. Knowledge of these things happening is criminal enough for certain charges. Absolutely. I totally agree with that. Yeah, definitely. Martin says, there aren't many Myras around these days. The names seem to have lost popularity for some reason. Yeah, that more so than the UK than the US, because I do know a couple Myras. So you people in the US have no idea who she is. No, it's that problem. Annika says, Homolka is and always will be the worst. I'm going to say the next woman is going to be worse than even Karla. Okay, here we go. Rose was a piece of work, all right. Oh my goodness, is she ever? And all right, so let's let me talk about Rose West. Okay, so Rose West, she is a nasty, nasty piece of work, and she did not need her husband to help her out in that department at all. She was sadistic on her own. Okay, so let me tell you about them just so you know who these wonderful people are. Yeah. Okay. So Rosemary West is an English serial killer who collaborated with her husband Fred West in the torture and murder of at least 9 young women between 1973 and 1987. She also, let me show you a picture of them. Where are they? Oh, just them? No. That was with the. I'm sorry, I meant to show those. Those were the Smiths. That's the David Smith that got them arrested. No, this is a picture of. Now, I think this is interesting when you look at the pictures of. Now, when you look at the pictures, these characters, they look like criminals before they even. They just look like criminals. They look like evil, crappy people. They do. But when you look at the Wests, I mean, those could be anybody. I mean, he looks like he could be the choir director down at the church, and she's the nice lady that helps prepare the Sunday brunches after the service. They look kind of nice, and they're dressed nicely enough. He's dressed in a suit. She's got this kind of homemakery type of looking, dress, and they look like they're happy people together. They don't look bad at all. So anyway, and these are some of the. Okay, these are some of the kids. These are her stepdaughters. So let me tell you what happened with her. All right, but she was involved with the murder of at least 9 young women. Also murdered her 8-year-old stepdaughter Charmaine. That was one of those girls. The majority of these murders took place at the West residence in Gloucester. So now. Rose is an inmate of prison New Hall, and she was convicted of 10 murders. He died by suicide in prison while awaiting trial. Okay, now let's see. Now, what kind of family did she come up with? Her parents separated when she was a teenager. She hadn't done well in school. She was moody, precocious. She lived with her mother and attended Cleve School for 6 months and then moved in with her father at age 16. Her father suffered from paranoid schizophrenia, was prone to extreme violence, and repeatedly sexually abused Rose and her older sister, Patricia. I don't know who says that he sexually assaulted them, but I have a feeling it's true, only because he did seem to get involved in other stuff later on, although I haven't done in-depth study, so I can't say, I don't know where that information is coming from. On the onset of puberty, she reportedly was fascinated with her developing body and would deliberately parade naked or semi-naked around the house in the presence of her younger brother, Graham. On numerous occasions at the age of 13, she would also creep into 9-year-old Graham's bed at night and molest him and her youngest brother, Gordon. Okay, so if this is true, she was a sexual abuser already when she was a teenager. And we often hear about this with boys. The boys are going into their sisters' rooms or they're attacking their brother's or sister's girlfriend while she's on an overnight. And here we have a girl who's doing those same things. So she is a sex predator already at teenage years. Now she meets Fred West. She meets him when she's 15. He's 27. They meet at a bus station. Initially, she's repulsed by his unkempt appearance and deduced he was a tramp. But she quickly became flattered by the attention he continued to lavish on her over those days when he was at the bus stop with her. She refused to go on a date with him, but finally allowed him to accompany her home. Having discovered Rose worked in a nearby bread shop, he would then get women to go and give her presents. And eventually, he asked her to go on a date. She finally accepted. Shortly thereafter, she began a relationship with Fred, becoming a frequent visitor to the caravan park where he lived with his 2 children from his first marriage. And that first marriage was pretty wacko. His daughter, Anne-Marie, and the stepdaughter, Charmaine. Rose became a willing childminder to Fred's daughters, who she noted were neglected. And they probably were neglected considering the situation let me see. Let me just stop here for a second. They put these 2 in separate groups. So I want to tell you what Fred West happened with the daughter, because that's just kind of interesting, and why he ended up with the 2 daughters. And this goes to show you the whole background of both of these is just really messed up, shall we say. Okay, so what happened to why he had those two daughters? Okay, let me tell you why. Okay, he married. This is before he met Rose. He married a woman named Rena. When he 21, let's see, she was pregnant when he dated her, and she was pregnant by an Asian bus driver at the time of her marriage to Fred, and may have relocated from Glasgow to England because they didn't like her being pregnant with a mixed race child. So she married Fred, and they lived in Fred's aunt's home. And then let's see, then Rena's daughter Charmaine was born. And to explain the child's mixed ancestry, Rena and Fred claimed that she had suffered a miscarriage and that Charmaine was adopted. So what? Okay, what? Wait a minute. Hold on a second here. Hold on a second. Oh, okay. Sorry. And they adopted her, not that she had an affair with this guy. All right. Then they relocated, and then she had another child, Anne Marie, and that was with Fred. And then she was struggling to bring up the children, but Fred treated the children harshly. So now you see, Fred wasn't a really nice guy. You see, he kept the girls on the bottom of a bunk bed with bars fitted to the spaces between the bunks, effectively caging them. They were allowed out only when he was at work because he couldn't stand to be around them, apparently. So anyway, then what happened was, after he had a bunch of affairs and fathered an illegitimate child, Rena discovers about that, and she started an affair with another guy, and he found that couple in an embrace. So he punched her, and then the other guy punched him, and then Fred pulled out a knife and stabbed at that guy. Then he punched him again, and then, let's see, did he kill him? Oh no, he just beat up the guy really bad. So then he beat her. Okay, so he beat Charmaine. Okay, it gets very confusing here. Anyway, meanwhile, he runs over a kid with his van, and he cleared of any wrongdoing. And then, let's see, then he rented a caravan. Rena joins him. And then then he started exhibiting dominance and control over all three women. Who are the other two women? Some other people there. Oh, two others were there. And he was prone to violent mood swings. And then Rena got, she beat him up, and she attacked the stepdaughter also. And then he started sexually abusing Charmaine. And then he encouraged Rena to turn to prostitution to supplement the income. So finally, he got very, very sadistic. And she said, she called somebody up and said, rescue us. So let's see. Somehow he ended up with the kids. And how did he end up with the kids? She had planned to slip away with the kids, but that didn't work out. So she would travel to visit the children while they were still with Fred. And then, let's see. Oh my gosh. Well, that gets very complicated. So anyway, there's another person involved here, McFall. This is another woman. She's 18 months old and pregnant with Fred's child. She vanished and was never reported missing. They eventually found her in pieces. So he killed her and cut her up. So, Rena came back. They lived together again. Then she left, leaving the children in his care. I love the word "in his care." All right. So at any rate, then he had nobody to supervise. And so he put the kids with the social services. And this is the one thing about this whole case, is that social services and the police dropped the ball like constantly. These children were being tortured. They were finally in social services' hands, and eventually they gave them back to Fred, because she was willing to take care of them for him. But why was she willing to do this? Because she wasn't nice to the kids. So she was doing that because it put her in good stead with Fred. So at any rate, so this is the part I'm going to try to shorten this because it just is so complicated. So anyway, now they're together. Are things going well? So she's at home taking care of the kids, and Charmaine was beaten by Rose, not by him, by Rose. She was vicious toward her, and she One time, a friend came in unannounced into the flat, only to see Charmaine naked and standing upon a chair, gagged and with her hands bound behind her back with a belt, as Rose stood alongside the child with a large wooden spoon in her hand. Now, right there, why aren't the police called to take this child out of there, take the children out of there? I do not know. So anyway, so she was beating Charmaine, and now it gets to the point where she kills Charmaine. So let me put the picture of Charmaine back up here. So Charmaine is the one on the left. That's Charmaine. Anne-Marie is on the right, and this is the child they had together at that point in the middle. That's Heather. That's Heather. Okay. Rose is believed to have killed Charmaine shortly before Fred's prison release date. Okay, so I guess he went to prison. I missed that somewhere here. She is known to have taken Charmaine, Anne-Marie, and Heather to visit him on 15th of June, but right after that, they believe that's when she murdered Charmaine. Let's see, what happened to Charmaine? Oh, well, apparently she told a friend that, she's kind of missing. So the reason she's missing is she went to live with her mother, and good riddance. Okay, so she got rid of her somehow. And since her husband was in prison, I don't think we can say that he goaded her into it. Okay, but he didn't like the kid anyway, so I'm sure he wasn't all bent out of shape about it because it wasn't his kid, theoretically. Not that seemed to really make a difference in who he tortured and raped, but okay. So anyway, supposedly Rena had taken her eldest daughter to live with her. So Fred was released from prison, and Anne-Marie wondered what happened to her sister, and told him that Rose had said the mother had come and taken her away. And so, and when she, yeah, okay. So anyway, Charmaine. Okay, what happened to Charmaine? Let's go to Charmaine. Charmaine's body was initially stowed in a coal cellar until Fred was released from prison. He later buried her naked body in the yard close to the back door of the flat, and he remained adamant that he had not dismembered her. But when they did the autopsy, they found that she had been, she had some severed at the hip, but they thought maybe some building construction did that. But then again, they found later that there are pieces missing from her skeleton, and he seemed to like to take pieces as little souvenirs. So now we have Rose committed the crime when Fred was in prison, but then he helped bury her afterwards. So just kind of like the reverse of with Paul and Karla, they both knew what the partner was getting into, and they didn't stop it, and they continued with it. So at that point, he had not killed anybody. Rose was the one who did that. So then we have, all right, now we have another one. Murder of Catherine Rena West. Okay, this is the ex-wife. All right, so what happened here? Rena came to confront him to try to get custody of her daughter back and the missing one. That was the last time she was seen alive. She is believed to have been murdered by strangulation, possibly in the backseat of Fred's Ford Popular, and likely while intoxicated. Her body was discovered a short time later with metal tubing around her remains. Also looking at the possibility she'd been restrained and subjected to sexual assault. And she was dismembered and put into plastic bags. So that was that one. So then at this point, I guess Fred and Rosemary actually got married. So now we already have two murders behind them. And I'm going to move this forward. Rose, after giving birth of her second child, she began to work as a prostitute, operating from their own home. She had this private room. They're like, don't go into mom's room because she's busy. In that room, she bragged to several people that no man or woman could satisfy her. When engaging in sexual relations with women, Rose would be increasingly brutal. She'd subject her partner to acts partially suffocating there, I'm going to not put that in here, other things that were done to the women. She had fetishes for sure. And then there were threesomes going on in there. And let's see, dominance, pain, violence. Rose controlled the West family finances. Fred would give her his pay packets. The room Rose used for prostitution was known throughout the West household as Rose's room. Had peepholes for Fred to be able to peek in because he was a voyeur, so he could look in at his wife, entertaining her clients. They also installed a baby monitor in the room, allowing him to listen from anywhere in the house. Lord. And they had a private bar there and a red light outside, which wasn't supposed to be disturbed. The red light would come on. She had a sole key to the room around her neck. Eventually, the father, who hadn't liked them getting married, opened up a cafe with Fred, and when he discovered that she was into prostitution, he would also go and have sex with his daughter. Why not, you know? And then this is what's really hard to understand. Then check this family picture out. This blows me away. So here is the family picture. By 1983, she'd given birth to 8 children, at least 3 of whom were conceived by clients. Fred willingly accepted these children as his own and falsely informed them that the reason their skin was darker than that of their siblings was because his great-grandmother was a black woman. Okay, so these were, I think some of these were men from India that were clients. And so the kids were, you know, a little biracial here. But he still claimed them as his children, which I got to give credit for. That was nice of you, Fred. But look at that picture. You look at this picture and you cannot imagine that the two adults there are sexually assaulting children and doing all kinds of horrible things to them. And the kids are actually smiling and they look well dressed. It's phenomenal to think of that. But there was tons of domestic violence. By the time they reached the age of 7, they were rarely allowed to socialize outside. They were restricted. They were beaten if they didn't do exactly what they were supposed to. They had to lie to the police. If the people at school said, how did that happen to you? They had to lie to the school teachers. And it seemed like no matter how many times, like this, look, the West children in 20 years were admitted to the accident and emergency department of local hospitals 31 times. The injuries were explained as accidents and never reported to social services. So again, social services and the police, they just let them down terribly. The violence was irrational, indiscreet, or just inflicted for Rose's gratification. So she was really nasty, and she even cut her children with knives and beat. She was a piece of work. Let's put it that way. Then there were some sexual assaults. Anna West, that was the other oldest girl. When she was 8 years old, she was ordered to undress, and then she was they bound her to the mattress, and Fred raped her with Rose's active encouragement. After the rape, Rose followed her to the bathroom, laughing at her. The sexual assaults would continue. They were told not to say anything. Severe beatings if they divulged what had happened. Rose occasionally sexually abused her by herself and liked to degrade her with horrible acts and bind her up. From the age of 13, they forced her to prostitute herself in the place. And then Caroline was a nanny that came there, and then she ended up getting murdered by them. They had sexual. They attacked her too. Let's see. Did they kill her? Oh, she didn't get killed. She went and told the police about what had happened, and they encouraged her not to charge them with rape or say that she was raped, so she wouldn't have to talk in court. And so they dropped the charges down to just indecent assault, and they got fined 50 pounds and walked free. Then she tried to commit suicide. And then there's more about the murders. And 3 months after the West assault trial, the couple committed their first known murder. And that was a woman that was a lodger. They became acquainted with her. And what did they do to her? They strangled her and buried her beneath the garage. And this just goes on and on and on and on and on and on. Oh, they murdered the Heather. That's the little girl. It's in that picture. They murdered her too. Let's see. Apparently she did tell. So she actually finally said something. And let's see what happened to her. Oh, she disappeared. She disappeared. In the years following Heather's disappearance, Fred occasionally joked that it threatened to the children they would end up under the patio like Heather if they misbehaved. With Rose's approval, he later constructed a barbecue pit immediately opposite where Heather had been buried and placed a pine table on her grave for kids to sit upon. I mean, talk about that. Okay, so the end of the story is how they got arrested was he asked his 13-year-old daughter, Louise, to bring some bottles to the room on the first floor, and they heard a scream, "No, don't." Let's see. Louise was found by her siblings writhing in pain and said that her father had raped and sodomized her and tried to strangle her. When Rose returned home, she told her mother that she'd been raped by Fred, and she said, "Oh, well, you were asking for it." And so then this continued on for the next few weeks. And then he filmed the rapes too, because he's a nice guy. And then let's see, who finally said something? Louise garnered the courage to confide in a close friend what her father had done. The friend told the mother, and the mother informed the police. And finally, they came onto the property and they found the pornographic videos, 99 of them, homemade videos. But they didn't find the video depicting the rape of her daughter. But she made a statement, and they finally did examinations. Then the rest of the children started ratting out their parents. So then it gets into this long thing here. Okay, so there's no question that they were both involved. Now, arrest of Rose West. Okay. Despite Fred's insistence that his wife held no knowledge of any of the murders, investigators suspected otherwise. Rose was arrested on the 20th of April, 1994, initially on offenses related to the rape of an 11-year-old girl and the physical assault on an 8-year-old boy. The following day, she refused bail and was transferred to prison, and she was questioned more about the murders of Heather and also Linda, I don't know how to pronounce that name, Gaw. And then she was charged with that girl's murder. Then both of them were charged with 5 counts of murder, with Rose simply replying, "I'm innocent," upon each of the formal charges. So then Fred confessed to the murders of his first wife and stepdaughter, because they found the parts of them. And so he hung himself, and she went to trial. And the testimony from the defense is interesting, that the claim was that she was unaware of his sadism before she married him. And so just because she was promiscuous and was domineering didn't mean that she was a bad person. She described herself as a victim of child abuse who naively married a violent and domineering man. And she joked about always being pregnant. And then she said she claimed never to have met any of the 6 of the victims buried there. And let's see. She claimed she loved her daughter and didn't know what happened to her. And oh yeah, lovely person. Let's see what happened afterwards. Did she say anything afterwards? She got guilty. There's no question about that. The aftermath. I just want to see what the aftermath is. They say anything about Rose. She wanted to appeal her sentence, of course. Oh, both of Rose's oldest biological children, her stepdaughter Anne-Marie, initially visited her in prison on a regular basis. Although by 2006, she had ceased contact with them after one of the girls started asking her if she was involved in the murders. And Rose justified her decision with the explanation, "I was never a parent then, and I could never be one now." Interestingly, the only person that will go see her is Anne-Marie. And, she killed her sister, Anne-Marie's sister, Charmaine. So I don't know why Anne-Marie would want to see her. Go figure. She must have some hold over her. And, then we go down here. In 1999, Anne-Marie attempted to commit suicide by drowning herself in the river. Stephen West is also known to have made a suicide attempt trying to hang himself. The youngest son, Barry, took his own life via a suspected drug overdose. Lovely. What a mess. What an absolute mess. Okay. So anyway, I tried to make that short, but I didn't do a very good job because it's so involved and so much going on there. But I just wanted you to hear how much she was a sadist. So Rose was a vicious, vicious person. She was vicious toward the children. She was a murderer. She was a sadist. She was a sexual sadist. She beat the children. She stabbed the children. She was not, I believe, anyway, just influenced by Fred. Okay. So the question I would have, was she a psychopath before she met him? The answer is yes. Was she culpable for everything? Yes. If she hadn't met him, would she have been a violent, vicious, nasty human being without him being around? The answer is yes. She was, and she would have found some other way to torture other people. A different man with kids to be. She would have been one of those stepmothers who kills the stepchild, without question. Even if the man was nice about it, somehow she would just beat the child to death every day while the husband was at work until the kid was dead one day. She'd be that kind of person. She wouldn't pick them necessarily up off the street and kill them, but I could see her killing a servant. I could see her killing a babysitter. I could see her killing. I'm surprised she didn't kill her own babies. Interesting enough, she wasn't into female serial killer stuff where she, smothers the kids and because she likes to have them and then kill them and have them again and just, get all that attention with a dolt of a husband who doesn't realize what's going on. She wasn't that type. She found a man who was just as nasty and vicious and sadistic and sexually sick as her. So they had a Paul Bernard or Karla Homolka thing going, but they were actually what Karla Homolka and Paul Bernardo did was they picked a person to be in their dungeon, one person in a dungeon. These two were nasty to everybody who came into their lives, and constantly nasty to everyone. They had a den of horrors, that whole den of horrors in their house, where they got their pleasures and tortured anybody who got in the way of their pleasures, and they got pleasure out of torturing. And if they were going to rape people, they'll rape people, anybody, their own kids, other people's kids, somebody who comes to help them out. They'll rape and torture anybody, both of them. So I think she is the nastiest of the three. And I think she would have killed even if she hadn't married Fred West. I don't know under what circumstances, but I still think she would have beaten and killed whoever came into her life, and whether it would be her own kids or somebody else's kids. And that's what I think about her. I think she's the worst of the lot. Now let me go back to some of your comments. Yeah, well, there's a good way to put it. The Wests were sick. Yeah, they were. How are we defining the worst? Well, as I said, hopefully not. This is an earlier comment, but yeah, my worst because I think she would have done it without Fred being around, and I think they didn't have the Moore murders. They were kind of like they were sort of willing to do anything weird crap. That's true. I don't think she was as involved in the crap part of it. She was in the supportive part much more. This woman was down dirty with everything. And I think instigated a lot of this stuff on her own. I do. I think she instigated a tremendous amount of it. So there are no ranks. They're all just the worst. Yeah. Well, yes, in that sense, this is true. All of them deserve a life sentence or a death penalty. All of them. But just when I'm looking at the way they behaved and whether they would behave if they hadn't gotten into a couple situation, a partner situation, would they have been as evil? And again, you're on a scale here, as evil if they hadn't hooked up. And I think Rose West would have been just as vicious. And I think she would have murdered without anybody else around her. Did they do that too? I wouldn't be surprised. Cameras in the children's bedrooms. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Joe says, one of the prescribers I worked with came from the prison system and had met Rose West. She said Rose was an absolute lunatic, totally void of any ability to empathize and nasty with it. She seemed extraordinarily nasty because at least Karla can fake being nice. We may not believe she's nice, but she can fake it, come across as sweet. No, I don't think Rose was like, yeah. Thanks for addressing how we're defining the worst. I'm not really, there's actually a book called The Psychopathy. He had a show on, and I really highly objected to it. Psychopathy. Dang it. I forgot the name of it. It's a book on, there's different levels of psychopathy, and it became very popular. It became a television show too, the levels of psychopathy. And I just always thought that was a little bit ridiculous. That I would never try to go to that level. I'm just doing this. My feelings about this are A and B and C, but let's see where that came. What was that? No, what's the name of that? Psychopathy. Dang it. Well, that's a good point. I like this. Faking being nice is more dangerous. That's true. At least with outright lunatics, we know what we have for the most part. That is very true. But you see, most of the lunatics, they didn't. When you talk about Rose West, her kids didn't have any choice. They were born into it, and they were trapped. They were born into, in a sense, an asylum, prison. They were already condemned. To the few people that came in and helped out or were lured in, they might have seen that family. And you now remember when we talk about the issue of a girl will get in a car, right? Karla got the girl in the car because once you see her boyfriend, Paul, who looks kind of just pleasant. He looked good looking dude. He didn't look harmful. He loved the fact he looked innocent. And Karla's like, hey, and you see a young couple, you don't think they're dangerous. So when you see that picture, look again at that picture of the kids. So just imagine. He's like, hey, can you help out babysitting some of the kids? You look at this whole family of kids. The last thing you think is that the parents are raping and murdering people. I mean, you wouldn't think that, because the more kids that are there, the more likely to think it's just a big, happy family. So I'm going to say that at that point in time, they played that pretty good, so that people didn't realize what was behind the walls of that house, that they weren't familiar with it. So I'm still trying to figure out this. Somebody tell me, does anybody remember that? Dang it. It's driving me crazy because I can't remember who did it. It was Dr. Trying to see if I'm putting in the I'm putting in the list here to try to remember what the measures of psychopathy. It wasn't Moss. Who was it who did this? Scales of evil. There we go. Finally found it. All right. The scale of evil from self-defense to psychopaths. So he had this is Michael Stone, a forensic psychiatrist and a professor at Columbia University. He had this scale of evil. And in the scale of evil, he starts out with, on this end, reactive, impulsive killers, crimes of extreme passion. And above that, he's got justified homicide. Well, that's not evil. If the homicide is justifiable, I don't even think it's evil. That's number one. Then from 2 to 7, he's got impulsive killers, crimes of extreme passion. And then he goes up to psychopathic and instrumental. I'm not sure what that means. And then serial killers at the end. He's got 22 levels, and he has this way of this scale. Many experts saw this scale was little more than pure sensationalism. But he examined the criminal mind and came up with this scale. And he had he has a book out there. So if you want to look it up, it's Michael Stone. You can find it on Amazon. So, okay. So first group, justified homicide. He says it's simple self-defense. That's level 1. He says these people lack any form of evil. There's no trace of psychopathy because of self-defense. Okay, well, this shouldn't be even on the chart. And then they've got the second group is malice out of justice and hatred, jealousy and hatred. Third group, touching on border of psychopathy. Level 12, they go up all these different levels. So you can look at all these. I might talk about these different levels at some point. But like he'll put level 15, this level includes psychopaths who in a fit of rage can kill a dozen people in cold blood. So mass murders are level 15. And Charles Manson, apparently. And then by the time you get up to level 17, you've got Ted Bundy. That's a serial killer with a fetish. Level 18, murderers who first torture and then carry out the murder. Level 19, they intimidate and terrorize them, and then they commit the crime. Level 20, psychotic killers whose only motivation is torture. That doesn't make any sense to me at all. Level 21 is psychopaths who seek to torture and not kill. Why is that worse than killing? And level 22, on the last level of the scale of evil, we have extreme torturers and psychopathic murderers. Well, I think that I agree with the continuum. I do, in the sense of, like, I always say narcissism and psychopathy are sort of on a continuum. And when you get up to serial killers, like they're way up here. So I do believe in some kind of continuum, but I just don't think you can put them into little boxes all the way up there and have 22 different, a scale, 22 levels. So if I had to put these 3 women on these levels, what would I put them on? I don't know. I really don't. I don't like any of the 3 women. I think they're all evil. I think they're all psychopathic. I just think they expressed it differently, and some are more vicious in certain ways than others, like Rose. But level 24, Amber Heard. Okay, we'll go with that. I'll put her on there. I think that's funny. Lisa says, I think it gives sort of a framework to go by. It does. Oh, you actually, okay. You said, I asked, his theories intrigue me, the anatomy of evil. So Lisa rather likes his Lisa. Hold on a second. Okay. Michael Stone had that show on ID called Most Evil, and it was a 22-point scale that he rated it on. Yes, that is the one. He takes a clarifying scientific approach to a topic that has for centuries been inadequately explained by religious doctrines. I agree with you on that. I think that has a point. I know I had issues with his book. I can't remember what they were, but something about it really bugged me. I think it's because I found his concept of what makes a worse evil thing based on, it's like me trying to say which one of these three women is really more evil. I can't really say. I just have to say Rose is the one I believe would have committed the crimes without the help of her husband. I think she was. I think Karla may well have never killed anybody, but participated in a whole lot of sexual perversion things and may have gotten into porn films or something, and never actually committed those crimes. She'd still be psychopathic, and don't want to hook up with her, and her children would suffer. But I don't think necessarily she would have killed. And Myra Findley, I think she was more the type that would go along with any bad boy doing whatever the bad boy wanted. She got a thrill out of the association. Rose West, I think she did like torturing, beating, and killing people. I think she didn't need any help at all doing that. She didn't. So if I had to put those on a scale of evil, I guess I'd put Rose toward that end. But I just have difficulty, putting people on a scale like that in these different places. I find it difficult, but I'll tell you what, Lisa, because I remember something about the show bugged me, and I just don't remember why. Could be because he got the show and I didn't. Jealousy was somewhere on that list. I think it was number 3. But anyway, I didn't kill him. But I'm going to tell you what. I'm going to read that book and see what I think about it. Because I'll be fair about it. I might have been wrong, and I might look at this book and go, "That's pretty smart," I just don't remember. There was something that bugged me. I don't know why, but I see your point. And I have to see whether I think there's anything scientific about it. That may be where I had issues. I don't know that it's scientific more than just a personal opinion, but I'll look into it, Lisa. Maybe we can have a phoner on that one. That would be kind of fun. And I wanted to address this. I have talked about this. Yes, Joe, I've talked about this quite often. Robert Hare's book on psychopathy is called Without Conscience. Yes. And Robert Hare he does have the psychopathy checklist that I find useful. And I recommend this book to everybody. If I had to recommend just a few books on psychopathy, this is one of them, because it gives the real basics of what psychopathy is, and shows that it's the lack of conscience and the empathy that runs the show. And the checklist is good because usually when you do meet a psychopath, you can go, "Oh, that's very interesting. Check, 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 check. Ooh, I think you just filled out the psychopathy checklist form." So I really do like that one very much. Maybe I'll do a show and I'll compare the two of them, and then we can have a discussion on that. So because I think I always liked his book, and but I don't know what the issue is. I don't remember what the issue I had with Michael Stone was. Let me see here. Annika says, we can say Rose is the worst. I think we're all comfortable with that. I don't know. I guess it all depends whether maybe it just depends whether you were a victim or not. I mean, if you were Karla's sister, you might think your sister's pretty much the worst because she gave you to. Karla was so psychopathic and so sick. She gave her own sister as a little sister as a present to her boyfriend. And she allowed her sister to be raped, and then she sexually assaulted her own sister. So I would say it's really hard to get away that's not pretty darn evil. You know what I mean? And she's not pretty nasty. She's a nasty piece of work. I mean, it's tricky. It really is tricky. I mean, that's why I say you really can't say this. They're all 3 women were pretty horrible people. All 3 women caused the death of many other people. So I don't have any sympathy for one of them. I don't think anybody's rehabilitatable. I think they're all psychopaths, and I think they all should have been in prison for the rest of their lives. And someone is running around in Canada having a nice life for herself. Makes me pretty sad. Shouldn't have happened. But yeah, it's an interesting, those three women are very interesting. I thought they were, they all came into things differently. I think one of the things about Karla, which is interesting, is that Karla, her childhood years didn't appear to be that bad. The other two women, their lives kind of sucked, you know what I mean? So they grew up in crappy households where, again, the acceptance of crappier behavior is easier to fall into, whereas Karla, I didn't, there's really nothing going on there that seemed like she should want to get involved in all this stuff and pick out Paul Bernardo. So, I don't know what her excuse was. Did she have one? I don't think so. Anyway, I thought that was really interesting. I know it was maybe a little hard to follow, because it's so complicated. But I really wanted just to focus on the women and not so much all of the crimes and everybody who was murdered and how they were murdered, because that's super, super complicated. But I will prepare some phone-ins for the future and try to figure out what to do. I am going to do a show on, I was going to do it tonight, but maybe I'll do it tomorrow. Depends on the fellow that was thinks his kids are lizard children. And the show for Sunday, I can tell you what that is right now. I'll get that set up and the notice sent out. I'm going to be doing the case of Darlene Krashok. Darlene Krashok was murdered 31 years ago in Colorado Springs, Colorado. She was in the Army. She went out for the evening to a bar, dancing with some friends, and never came home. And that remained unsolved for 30 years, and they just convicted the guy last year. And I actually was supposed to be in this. There's a show on it. It's called Joe Kenda is in it. It's called Homicide Hunter. It's on ID. I'll put that in the information. It's on Discovery. It just came out on Discovery ID Investigation Discovery. I think it's called Homicide Hunter. Hold on a second. And it's for Darlene Krashok. It just came out yesterday. I watched it yesterday. I was supposed to be in that show. The producers called me up and asked me to be in it, and then they dumped me. I think they didn't. I have some interest. I worked on the case years ago, profiled the case, had access to the information on it. And I had some leads that I wanted the police to follow, and I don't believe they followed up properly on those. And there were a couple issues that I brought up, which I thought should have. Yeah. So I think they didn't want me in the show because they didn't want me to actually bring up what I said in the profile, because I think that would have kind of messed up the point of the show. The show is actually quite decent. It's way too long. They put too much dramatic music in between scenes, and it really gets boring. They drag it, and they shouldn't. Kenda's not bad in it. Most of it is fairly accurate, except they never mentioned that a profiler worked on I didn't work directly with the police on that, so theoretically they could leave me out. But I do know a lot about the case, so this is going to be personal to me. It is actually that book is actually in that case is actually in this book, The Profiler. Where was it? Oh yeah, it was called Sarah, Murder Behind the Bar, and her real name is Darlene Krashok, but in this case I had to have a pseudonym in here. So my profile was actually in this book put out in 2010, and the police had my profile. Would my profile, if they paid more attention to it, help to solve the case sooner? That's a good question. I'm going to bring up what I had in the profile that I did not see addressed in the show at all, and how they did get this one guy, and is he guilty? Because his sister has been in contact with me, the guy who was convicted. He wanted to read the profiler book, but he's like, he wanted a copy of that book. And his defense team did talk to me. And so, he couldn't get it because the book was never put out in paperback. And apparently in the prison, he couldn't get hardback books. I guess because you can hurt people with them. I guess that's the reason. And the book was never put out in paperback. So But he knew about me, he knew about the profile. So the defense team, and I did not work with the defense team on this, and the guy was convicted. It seems a decent conviction. I'm going to discuss that. They're still trying to go for an appeal, and they think I might be able to help, but I don't know that I think there's any evidence to say it wasn't him. So yeah, it's an interesting familial DNA case. So that's going to be all on Sunday. It's going to be a fascinating case. It's really, really interesting stuff. So do come on Sunday. And I'm looking forward to doing that. I think what Anne says here. I used to love roses, but now I'll have to stick to tulips. Unless there's some sicko tulips out there. Yeah, she knew how to ruin a name, didn't she? A rose by any other name would be, it would be her. Oh, God, help us. Welcome, Lisa. I'm glad it was fascinating. I thought I may have made it a little too difficult to understand. I hope I haven't, because it was complicated. It really is complicated. But that's why I try to do that kind of thing at a Hangout, so it's not during a regular show. So anyway, again, if you're new to the show and you haven't been here before, please do subscribe to the channel to help support. And if you'd like to be with the great folks in the chat room and maybe do some of those call-ins where you can call in and we can have our discussion and you can disagree with me, as long as you don't say, you're an idiot, you're not really a profiler, and we'll have a lovely chat. We can go below, it's Patreon, click on that and join Patreon, and it helps support the channel as well. And you don't have to come to all 8 shows. You don't have to you can come to as many as you feel like, still support the channel. So I'm glad you were here, Joe, to hear my little bit about Jack the Ripper. So, and also because these are UK cases, and I was glad to do it on UK Day. So when you were still awake. And Martin was still awake, unless Martin disappeared on me. But don't forget, guys, even if you're not part of Patreon, all my shows are open to the public. So there's no I don't have these hidden shows for patrons only. Only difference is patrons get to participate in the live part of it. So, Martin's still here. Yay, Martin. I'm glad you're here. And wait a minute, do we have one more? Oh no, I was thinking of one more person from the UK, but no, I don't think so at the moment anyway. So anyway, awesome to have you all here. And I will hopefully see you. I'm going to try to get that other show out. And then I'll see you hopefully on Sunday for the Darlene Crashot case. I think you're really going to like that one. It's truly an amazing case. I'm glad they theoretically solved it. And how they did that is also fascinating. And so there's a lot to talk about on Sunday. It's going to be really, really interesting. So hopefully I will see you all then. And if you're new to the show, do check out all my other ones. Oh, and I always say this, check out the playlist, because a lot of times you wish I had analyzed a case and I actually have already done it. You look on the playlist, you might find your favorite crime there, and it's already been done. So go check that out. See you later.